Hello and welcome to our Serving the Sire in 2 Samuel. This is a 15-minute Bible study that we're doing here, courtesy of the Lifeford Bible Baptist Church, to just help you to grow and being enriched in the Word of God. You think 15 minutes isn't a big deal. Well, a little here, a little there really adds up. I know just in my life, we're almost at the end of this fall, will be 5 years we've been doing these studies. And as we've just done it twice a week, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, I've learned so much about the book of Psalms, about the book of John, about the book of 1 Samuel, about the book of Ephesians, and now here we are learning about the book of 2 Samuel. Well, I know in 2 Samuel it's a book of turmoil, and David has a lot of problems, and especially in the latter half, and it all comes down from his sin with Bathsheba. And God still's merciful. God gives him the victory. Last time we were together, at the end of chapter 18, David has received word that the battle's over, that his son Absalom has died, and I don't know of maybe any other better word to say then that just David falls apart. End of end of chapter 18, verse 33, he says, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son." David is grieving over the loss of his son. It had to have been a bittersweet moment to know that the kingdom was restored, that everything was going to be safe, and then, like maybe a ton of bricks, it came down upon him that his son had perished. David had told his men, deal kindly with my son, but that probably was not realistic thinking. How do you deal kindly with somebody who is wanting to destroy you? And Joab acted in his own best interest, but probably, when all is said and done, in the best interest of Israel as well, that Absalom could not be kept around, and so he has been defeated. And we pick it up in verse 19 as we're looking at the return of the king, how King David's going to return to Jerusalem. There's a lot of repairs that have to be done. Civil wars, fightings, all, again, results of sin. You can have the victory, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have to go back and mend some fences and do some healing. Verse 1, "And it was told Joab, Behold, the king weepeth, and he mourneth for Absalom." Now, that's not an unusual thing, even though the son had been evil. The problem is that David is lingering in his mourning, that he's mourning to excess, to where he's doing it to the neglect of his own people. Look at it, verse 2, "And the victory that day was turned into mourning unto all the people. For the people heard say that day how the king was grieved for his son. And the people gat them by stealth," for that is very quietly, almost like sneaking in that day into the city, "as people being ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, Oh, my son Absalom, Absalom, my son, my son." This is at some means a pathetic scene, and another one, it is a problematic scene in the fact of David is just beside himself. But there comes a time in mourning where we sorrow with those who sorrow, but we don't sorrow with those that have no hope. And there's a danger that our sorrow can turn into a selfishness, to where then it becomes a kind of woe is me kind of a thing. And I think David has morphed into this, where he cannot get up, he cannot go down, and he's wailing very loudly. And the people come back, are excited. "David, we won the war for you. David, all is okay." And then they hear him crying, and they can tell by all the servants. And so they go from adulation to then they're ashamed. And Joab recognizes this. Joab is in and amongst the people. And so he had some things that David did not have. And Joab's going to actually save the day here. Verse 5, "Joab came into the house to the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the faces of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life, and the lives of thy sons, and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives, and the lives of thy concubines. If thou lovest thine enemies, and hatest thy friends. For thou hast declared this day that thou regardest not neither princes nor servants, for this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived, and all we had died this day, then it had pleased thee well. Wow, Joab, he's not, we talked about mercy and truth last week. He's definitely not a mercy kind of a guy. He's a truth guy. And he says, listen, David, and I do believe he does this somewhat in love for David, but I think Joab's always out for his best interests as well. He knows that for the kingdom to be stable, it's good for him. He says, listen, here are all these people coming back, and they saved you and your family and your wives, and now they're ashamed because you're showing greater love for your enemies than you do for your friends. And you're loving your enemy, of course, Absalom, so much, it's as if you hate your friends. And he said, the word on the street is this: you'd have probably been happier if we had all died and Absalom had lived. Whoa. But he's right. And this is where David needs to get up. He needs to clean himself up and go out. He did this when his child with Bathsheba died, and Bathsheba's son died. And remember, they were worried to go in and tell him. And remember, this was, I think, chapter 12. And when he heard his servants whispering, he went in and he went ahead and cleaned himself. And he went and he worshiped and he ate. And they were all perplexed. And he said, God has determined this. Well, God has determined this as well. Why can't David clean himself up and move on now? I think the weight and the toll of sin, that the consequences of sin have just hammered him. He's lost the little baby infant that we don't have a name for. We know that he lost Amnon, who was brutally murdered. Now he's lost Absalom, and David knows that the sword is never going to depart from his family. And it's almost as if the man who had encouraged himself in the Lord in the book of 1 Samuel has just gotten to a point where he says, I just cannot go on any further. And it takes a man like Joab to kind of very roughly say, you've got to. You get up and you go do your job. Verse 7, now therefore arise, go forth and speak comfortably unto thy servants. For I swear by the Lord, if thou go not forth, there will not tarry with thee this night, and that will be worse unto thee than all the evil that befell thee from thy youth unto now. He says, David, get up. Get out there at your place. Smile. Thank the people. Because if you do not do this right now, the whole nation will come against you. And it will be the worst thing that has ever happened to you. And David's had some pretty bad things happen to him. He's had Saul, and he's had, of course, we've mentioned the sons. And I tell you, Joab may be a little rough on this, maybe a little more mercy needed, but truth, he's right down the line. And let me encourage you, we've got to be very careful when we grieve. There needs to be a time, don't misunderstand me, where we rest. I can remember when my dad passed. He had a long-term illness, and especially a month or two before, just almost around the clock, I knew I was tired, but I didn't realize how tired I was until when he passed. There was that relief. There was a little bit, of wanting to look after mom and other things, but there was also that we all need to rest. And I tell you what, it was months before I really felt like my body battery got recharged. There were times I didn't feel like doing things. I was just so sad. And I don't know that it would have been wrong. I didn't do this, but I don't know it would have been wrong to take a little break for a week or so and not preach at church and not do certain things. And a lot of businesses help you with that. They give you like a bereavement time, and I think that can be good. But there comes a time where you've got to be willing to kind of put those things aside and then say, okay, I've grieved. I've thanked God for this. And now I've got to return to quote unquote normalcy. Will everything be back to normal? Well, of course not. There is a hole there that is not going to ever be replaced. You can't replace that individual. But you've got to be going back to what the Lord has called you to do. And this, I think, is where you don't sorrow as those that don't have hope. You weep, you sorrow, and then you keep going on for the Lord, because this is not the end. We will see them again. And this is what David needs to do. Verse 8, then the king arose, he sat in the gate, and they told unto all the people, saying, behold, the king doth sit in the gate. And all the people came before the king, for Israel had fled every man to his tent. So finally, it became kind of like a ghost town, because everybody was ashamed and didn't know what to do. And when word got around David's back in the gate, people came back out of their tents and began to understand that, okay, this is a good thing. And all the people were at strife throughout all the tribes of Israel. Civil war is just that. It is a divided nation. And they said, the king saved us out of the hand of our enemies. He delivered us up out of the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled out of the land for Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now, therefore, why speak ye not a word of bringing the king back? This is really the tribe of Judah. Remember, Absalom went to Hebron, which would have been one of the prominent cities of Judah. He's joined, of course, Absalom himself would be of the tribe of Judah. Ahithophel was of the tribe of Judah. Amasa was of the tribe of Judah. And now they're saying, we need to figure out how we can get back into good favors with David. And we need to get back. And it kind of sounds like almost emissaries were sent to them as they hesitated to say, you need to get back here and you need to pledge your allegiance back to David. And verse 11, and King David sent to Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, saying, speak unto the elders of Judah. He goes to the priest. That's a wise move by David. Sometimes when there's things that are happening, you need spiritual or godly people to do some interceding for you, to do some talking and working some problems out. That's where pastors can be a big help in your life. Speak unto the elders of Judah, saying, why are ye the last to bring the king back to his house? Seeing the speech of all Israel is come to the king, even to his house. Ye are my brethren, ye are my bones and my flesh. Wherefore then are ye the last to bring back the king? And say ye to Amasa, art thou not my bones, and art thou my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if thou be not captain of the host before me, continually in the room of Joab. And he bowed the heart of all the men of Judah, even as the heart of one man, so that they sent this word unto the king, return thou and thy servant. So the king returned and came to Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to conduct the king over Jordan. Now, I think we're going to stop there today. I've got a couple of things I want to give you, and then we'll get into the lineup. That when the chickens come home to roost, they're coming home real fast, because they want to find out whether David's going to take their heads off. If anything, they're going to plead for mercy. But here we find that David comes back, and maybe being political, maybe being led emotionally, he makes a very interesting move here. He receives the men of Judah back. That's not what I'm talking about there. That's a good move. And he bowed their hearts. He kind of got them back to where they needed to be. Sometimes when somebody does this wrong, you got to reach out. You got to extend that olive branch and help them feel comfortable again. You say, yeah, but they wronged me, and they're the ones that need to come back. David could have been that way, but it was never going to bring peace. Sometimes peace requires you taking the first step. And that's what David does. And he appoints Amasa. Remember the guy that led the army against him? He says, Amasa, I'm going to appoint you to be head of the armies instead of Joab. Now, why would David do that? Couple of thoughts here. One is that Amasa led most of the treasonous soldiers. So if you bring him in, all the other soldiers are in essence going to get their amnesty, going to get the idea there that we're going to be okay, and so they'll be all right. And so he does that. Secondly, he probably got wind that Joab went ahead and killed Absalom rather than bringing him back. Although that's probably what needed to be done. David has had a lot of problems with Joab, and as Joab increases in age, he increases in power, and he becomes more and more a threat to David, to where you'll see, well, we won't see, but if you read about it in 1 Kings, he actually tries to overthrow Solomon there while David is on his deathbed. So Return of the King. Remember, peace, sometimes it takes you taking that first step. And that first step's a hard one, but boy, is it a good one. And we'll pick it up again next time. Can you believe it? We're here in the month of June. And we'll see you next time. And we'll try to dig back into and maybe finish up chapter 19. Hey, God bless you. Have a great week.